So Nomiki Konst was on Fox News again, and they were talking about Roe v. Wade. So there's a bit of a debate here. I want to get into this, and I want to get your opinion about it. I think she started off rather strong, but then the way that she ends, I was just like, oh boy, why did you have to say that? So let's go ahead and get into this story. Here we go. Leaked SCOTUS draft sparks nationwide Roe protests. So let's hear what they have to say.
Let's bring in Mike Huckabee, former Arkansas governor, Leo Terrell, constitutional lawyer and civil rights attorney. Both are Fox News contributors, and Nomiki Konst, host of The Nomiki Show and director of Matriarch, which supports progressive.
They brought Mike Huckabee. Did she say Mike Huckabee? I think she did.
Let's bring in Mike Huckabee, former Arkansas governor, Leo Terrell, constitutional lawyer and civil rights attorney. Both are Fox News contributors, and Nomiki Konst, host of The Nomiki Show and director of Matriarch, which supports progressive women running for Congress. Welcome to all of you. Good to have you with us today. You know, Governor Huckabee, I want to start with exactly what David Spun ended with there, because we have not heard from the president on this, and certainly he could be a voice of reason and of moderation. He is a Catholic, and there are these verbal attacks against the Catholic justices of the Supreme Court and potential for demonstrations even inside Catholic churches in particular this weekend. So what do you think the president should do?
Notice how there's like 3 against 1 here. Anybody else notice this? You have 3 conservatives against 1. What are we calling Nomiki these days? Is she still considered a progressive, a leftist? Dorothea said, damn, Mike is old. I know. That's why I was like, wait, is that Mike Huckabee? That didn't look like him. But notice how they did this. 3 against 1.
The president on this, and certainly he could be
a
voice
one more time.
Of reason and of moderation. He is a Catholic, and there are these verbal attacks against the Catholic justices of the Supreme Court and potential for demonstrations even inside Catholic churches in particular this weekend. So what do you think the president should do?
I think he really should tell the people that this is not an appropriate form of protest. If they want to go outside the Supreme Court where these people work, that's fine. But going to their homes is inappropriate. It's dangerous. And it's not a precedent that we should start. And the president ought to be very forceful and say, this is the kind of thing that leads to a real insurrection where government agencies are prevented from doing their jobs. I found it very interesting that some of these people were talking about Catholic extremists, these 6 justices. Actually, what they are is faithful Catholics. I'm grateful that they're living out their faith, that believe that every human life has intrinsic worth and value, that there's
2 things I want to point out here. Number 1, he believes that the president should tell them that this is not the right place to protest, not protesting at their homes. People have different opinions about this, but I do want to add something here. Where is the right place to protest? Because every time there are protests in this country, there's this debate over how you should protest, where you should protest, who you should protest with. It just seems like no matter which way you do it, it's not going to be seen as acceptable. Even when there are peaceful protests, and from what I've seen, these have been peaceful protests, that's still not acceptable. When you have people who are looting stores, they're like, well, you can protest, but not in that way. You need to do it peacefully. Isn't that what they said during the George Floyd protest? But then mainstream media wasn't showing you the protests that were peaceful. They were showing you mainly the ones that were not peaceful. That's for ratings. But there's always this crowd that comes in and they just have to debate it for some reason. And at the end of the day, they really don't want you to protest at all. Let's remember these protests started at the Supreme Court, which Mike Huckabee recommended that should be done there. That's where they started. Now, I used to feel that going to people's homes was a bit too much. That was back then. Times have changed. And if protesting at their homes didn't actually do anything and didn't really get their attention, then they wouldn't be asking them to stop. If it wasn't actually effective, they wouldn't ask them to not do it. You really can't ignore a group of screaming people right outside your house. Even if you're inside, you can still hear them. Now, the second thing I wanted to bring up is he mentions their Catholic faith. I'm happy that they're practicing their faith. Why are we mixing religion with law? That's something I don't agree with. Listen, you can believe whatever you want religiously. If you want to be Catholic, if you want to be a Buddhist, if you want to be, Pentecostal, whatever, have at it. Freedom of religion, right? But when it gets to the point where we start to implement your religious belief and apply them to laws, that's where I have to say no. Because not everyone has the same religious belief as you. So the fact that they want to basically, overturn Roe v. Wade because it inflicts their religious belief, right? Okay. That's you. That's on you. How you come in and try to change an entire law because of what you believe religiously. So I don't agree with that. But again, this conversation is going to get interesting. Wait for it.
There's no such thing as an expendable or disposable human being. I find it refreshing that their faith actually means something to them. That's not extremism. That's faithfulness.
Oh, my gosh.
But by the same token, Leo, all of these justices, when they were nominees for the court, said that they would approach everything from a standpoint of whether or not it was constitutional.
Aha. So she brings up this point. But there's one other thing I wanted to say about the whole faith issue that he just brought up. If he's happy that they're practicing their faith, is he happy that they're practicing their faith, or is he happy that they're practicing Christianity? Because let's be real. We've had politicians in this country in DC that they'll say they're happy for people practicing their faith and they should express their religious beliefs, but they're talking about Christianity. They're not talking about people who are Muslim. They're not talking about people who are Buddhist. They're talking about Christianity. Just something I wanted to point out.
And that they would leave their faith aside. So I would imagine that although you can obviously, as the governor does, recognize the sincerity of their faith, we're also looking at justices who have a reputation for basing things on the law. And it would appear from this opinion that they look at this and say that there wasn't really a constitutional basis for Roe v. Wade, and that these sorts of decisions are better off being decided by individuals in the voting booth at the state level.
If there wasn't a constitutional basis for it, then why was it passed in the first place?
You're absolutely right. And let me just simply say 30 years of being a civil rights lawyer and a constitutional lawyer. Let's be very.
Oh, Lord. See, this is what they're going to do. This is what they do best. Let me bring on that one Black person who also worked with civil rights to agree with us. Let me bring on a Black person just to make everybody know. See, Black people feel this way too. They always do that. They always do that. And they've done this multiple times with Nomiki. There was another time she came on here on the Faulkner report, and the other guy that she was debating against was a Black guy. And he was like, I'm a Black Christian conservative and da-da-da. Like, come on, dude. Come on. Know when you're being used.
Clear. Roe v. Wade has no constitutional basis. There is no right to privacy to have an abortion in the Constitution. And what they're doing, they're basically allowing this to be sent back to the states where democracy, where people will get able to vote in 50 states. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with the right to vote on an issue such as abortion when it is not based on constitutional law? And that's what these justices, if that decision somehow becomes final, will return Roe v. Wade to the states where
that is a problem. So when people say, why can't you just leave it up to the states? Here's the problem with leaving it up to the states. There are certain states in this country, particularly, especially some of them in the South, and I've lived in the South, they are going to make these restrictions for abortion incredibly strict, to the point where some people may have to leave that state and go to another state to have an abortion if they need be, or it could be considered a crime for you to cross state lines to go to another state to have an abortion. They can write the rules that they want. And the people who are really going to be affected are women who are poor, women who are Black, Latino. People who are wealthy are not going to be impacted by this the way that poor and working class people will be. That's the problem with taking it back to the states. Some states are going to be more lenient and others are going to be more strict. In some of those states where they're going to be more strict, they may make a rule that you cannot cross state lines to have an abortion. That may be considered criminal. Again, now this goes back to the incarceration issue, just another way for them to penalize you more. Harsher penalties. And I played this video last week. I'm not going to play it again, but I really want you guys what this is really about. I want you to know what this is really about. Millennials, my generation, and Gen Z, we are not having children at the rate that our parents did and our grandparents did. So we are having a decline. The child birth rate in this country is declining. And the reason why a lot of people are not having kids is because, number one, there's the climate change factor that people don't want their kids to have to face that or deal with that. There's that. There's the economic factor. Some people just can't afford it. There's a lot of student loan debt. People can't afford to buy a house, let alone start a family, let alone have kids. So there's all different reasons for it. But let me tell you something. Corporations, and I say this because, again, they're the ones that control these two parties. They see this happening. Do you think they're really that concerned about abortion per se, about someone's right, about that child's right to be born? No, they are concerned about labor. They need you to have children so that they have people to do the labor. That's what that is about. And if things keep heading the way that they are, they're not going to have enough people to do the labor. And there's automation that can come in with this and help as well. But that being said, you can't automate everything. Some things are still going to require people to do the job. It all goes back to capitalism. That's why they don't want you to have abortions. That's why these corporations still want you to have these kids, so that they have people that can work at their companies and do the work. They need to have more people at the bottom that they can exploit. That's what this is really about.
Belongs not in the Constitution, not in the federal government, but to the states. 50 laboratories in a federal system, Martha.
So, Nomiki, Rachel Carmona, who is the executive director of the Women's March that we remember after President Trump was elected, she came out and she said this: we will be ungovernable until this government starts working for us, until the attacks on our bodies let up, and until the right for abortion is codified into law. So she's saying we will be ungovernable. What would you say to the individuals who are committed to, and protest obviously is an American right, and peaceful protest is absolutely an American right. Mm-hmm. But what do you say to those individuals who are considering going into churches, into masses this weekend, and potentially, to the front steps of these justices' homes?
Now, this is really interesting because the Bible says, come as you are. So now you can't go to the churches. No, take it to the churches, take it to the homes, take it to the streets.
Well, they're not doing anything that isn't peaceful. Going into a church and expressing your feelings and walking and dressing a certain way is incredibly peaceful, especially if you are a member of that congregation, as they're calling for people to do. The majority of Catholics in this country support legalized abortion. The majority of Americans support Roe v. Wade, which, by the way, sir, was already ruled on with the court that you supposedly respect so much. So what you're saying now is that we should reverse a decision that was already ruled on and is supported by most Americans because there's a conservative movement that is well funded with extremists, extreme right-wing conservative justices that have been groomed for decades, And this is not, I mean, if you're going to talk about the Constitution, yes, they can have their personal faith, but I don't want you to infringe your faith on me. Like I don't infringe my faith on.
So first of all, I'm going to interrupt here and I'll play it back just a little bit because I'm interrupting. Notice how he's interrupting her. Notice how when he was speaking, everyone let him speak. Huckabee didn't interrupt him. The host didn't interrupt him. Nomiki didn't interrupt him. But while she's speaking, he's going to interrupt. And actually, I've seen this happen multiple times when she's gone on Fox News. So he just interrupts and goes, "You're wrong. You're wrong." Let's go back in. Let's go back in. Just keep watching. This gets interesting.
For decades. And this is not, I mean, if you're going to talk about the Constitution, yes, they can have their personal faith, but I don't want you to infringe your faith on me. Like I.
So I do agree with her on that issue. Yes, you can have your personal faith, but you shouldn't infringe your religion on other people. You can believe what you want to believe, but that doesn't mean other people have to believe that as well. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Don't infringe my faith on you. I am not wrong. This has been ruled on. It was ruled on.
You are absolutely wrong, Martha. You know what? She's not a lawyer.
I'm just going to give Leo a chance to respond to this.
How am I wrong?
Thank you. Let me just thank you.
Did you hear what he just said? He said she's not a lawyer. Listen to this. Listen to this.
My faith on you. I am not wrong. This has been ruled on. It was ruled on.
You are absolutely wrong, Martha. You know what? She's not a lawyer.
I'm just going to give Leo a chance to respond to this.
He said she's not a lawyer. And I mean, it just like, yes, Leroy, he credentialed her. So I'm just like, really? Okay, let's go back in. Let's go back in.
How am I wrong?
Thank you. Let me just thank you.
Well, here, let him explain. Go ahead, Leo.
Go back to the history. Go back to the history books.
See, this is what they do. See, this is where Nomiki should have jumped in when she said, let him explain. This is where Nomiki should have jumped in and should have said, well, no, I wasn't finished talking. He interrupted me.
Check out Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education. Respectfully, please, because stare decisis does not applies only when they are a grounded basis of fact. This Supreme Court has a logical constitutional right to reverse Roe v. Wade because of the absence of law that supports it. One last point. No, please. Hey, listen, you're making a misrepresentation that somehow women's rights will be eliminated. That is a lie because it will go back to the states, California, New York, Illinois.
But is that necessarily a lie, though? Because like I just told you, if it goes back to the states, some of the states are going to make it illegal. Let's be realistic here. Some of the states are going to make it illegal. Why is he so angry about that? He is fired up. He is fired up. Hold on, guys. There's a plane flying over. Okay, it's gone.
I did not say that, but I do believe that.
Be honest.
I did not say that, but I do believe that. Why do you hate women so much? I'm sorry.
Jump in.
There's an expression. You're very angry.
And that's where she loses it. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. I agreed with what she said in the beginning. Like, you shouldn't inflict your religious rights on other people. I agreed with that. And then she lost me. So listen to this.
Respectfully, please, because stare decisis does not applies only when they are a grounded basis of fact. This Supreme Court has a logical constitutional right to reverse Roe v. Wade because of the absence of law that supports it. One last point. No, please. Hey, listen, you're making a misrepresentation that somehow women's rights will be eliminated. That is a lie because it will go back to the states, California, New York, Illinois.
I did not say that, but I do believe that.
Be honest.
I did not say that, but I do believe that. Why do you hate women so much? I'm sorry.
Jump in.
There's.
And then she lost it. She said, why do you hate women so much? Thank you for the super chat, DL. It pains me that Nomiki Konst, I'm trying to say her name correctly, you guys, I'm sorry, is what's being presented as left to the largest audience in cable television. Thank you so much, DL, for that super chat. I agree with you. She said, why do you hate women so much? Guys, do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? Like throwing in that statement, first of all, you're making an assumption. You don't know if this person hates women or not, but that's not the way to win an argument. That's not the way to win an argument. Not once in this conversation did he say that he hated women or he didn't like women, anti-women, any of that. And I felt like she didn't have anything else to say, so she said that. That's not a good look. That's not a good look.
An expression. You're very angry about something that's been ruled on. Why do you respect this court more than the previous court?
No, please. I hate women.
You just said.
I hate my mother. I hate my sisters.
I'm not the one angry right now.
I hate women.
Look at the angry man.
Please.
Stop. Why are you so mad? Why are you so mad? It's not affecting your life.
No, truth.
It's my life.
Nomiki, stop. Okay. First of all, it's very insulting to say that someone hates women. Okay.
They do this to her every time she goes on here. Every time she goes on Fox News, they cut her off and they say, stop, stop. And she still continues to go back on. I'm sorry, but she's wrong here at the end. Why do you hate women so much? No, see, this is why people, when they point fingers at those of us on the left, this is what they make fun of us about. Because they say this is what we do. We'll say stuff like, oh, why do you hate women? Oh, why do you hate black people? Why do you hate gay people? And I'm sorry, but she just represented the stereotype that people have about people on the left. I don't know why that, no.
There's nothing that Leo has ever said or done on this show that would indicate that he hates women. So that's a completely unfair thing to say. And the fact of the matter is, no, well, you know, there's a large percentage of people in this country who are supportive of this decision. 54% believe that abortion should be banned after 15 weeks, a majority of those who were asked. So we just have to keep this, we got to keep this conversation from degrading into you hate women or any other form of that. We have to be able to talk about it, and we hope there'll be peaceful protests this weekend and that no one's church services will be disrupted.
I disagree with her here. I don't care if someone's church service is disrupted. The whole point of a protest is to grab people's attention to an important pressing matter. And if that means that you have to stop traffic, if that means that you have to interrupt church services, then be it. Be it. If you go back and you look at protests years from this country, you go back and you look at the civil rights movement protests, you look at the women's rights movement protests, they disrupted environments. That's how they got people's attention. That's how they got media attention. Nobody wants to just let me go protest and just sit down on the lawn and just sit here and fold my arms. No, you have to get their attention. Yes, go to their church service, go to their homes. I'm sorry. We've had enough at this point. We've had enough. I'm sorry, but where do you draw the line? They don't want you to protest any type of way because reality is they really don't want you to protest.
Because that is certainly disrupting the peace. So we will see what happens. Thank you to all of you.
What peace? What peace do we have right now? Goodbye, Fox. Where's the peace at in this country? Let me know in the chat. Tell me. Shout out to Linda for becoming a new Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Tony said, new subscriber, love your content. Keep it up. Thank you so much. Welcome, Tony. Greg Bruce says the host is okay with the discussion degrading into wrong, though. LOL. It's a good point. Good point. That happens to her every time she goes on there, though. They interrupt her and she lets them do it. Delthea said if Jim Crow had been left to the states, we'd still have Jim Crow. Thank you, Delthea. Thank you so much for saying that. Juliet said every protest in the modern world can be illegal. All the police have to do is call it an illegal assembly. You guys are so smart. Shout out to Cryonsynth for the super chat. Roe v. Wade needs to be removed as a political game for the elite. The protesters are purposely screaming at the wrong mansions. This needs to be law of the land. Dems will never stop using your womb. Well said, Cryosynth. And that brings me into the next clip. Now, protesters, if you have not heard, they've been at Kavanaugh's house. I believe they were at Judge Alito's house this morning. Take a look at this.
Activists now planning to protest outside of Justice Samuel Alito's house after a weekend of outrage over the leaked Supreme Court opinion on Roe.
This is you don't get to take away our bodily autonomy and enjoy your Saturday night at home. You get to do one or the other.
And
That's
what does
right.
it mean to you to be marching to the justices' homes?
This is personal, so we're going to take it to the personal space.
Okay.
Right.
They did this, not us.
The Daily Signal news producer and podcast co-host Douglas Blair is following the protest there on the ground, and he joins us now. Good morning to you, Douglas.
Good morning, Ainsley. How are you doing?
Doing well. Was that you asking the lady the questions? And what did you see at these protests?
I mean, what I saw outside of these justices' homes was nothing short of horrifying. It really tells you a lot that we've gotten to the point in this country where protesters feel they can go to somebody's private residence, scream and yell and try to intimidate them into voting the way that they want them to do. And for a cause like abortion, where on the pro-life side, we've acknowledged time and again that this is not just a clump of cells, it's not a parasite, as some of these protesters were saying, it is a human being. It is a human life.
Oh my God. Oh boy. I'm not going to get into that whole debate, but I want you to pay attention to what he says right here.
What I saw outside of these justices' homes was nothing short of horrifying. It really tells you a lot that we.
Does this look horrifying to you? He said it's nothing short of horrifying. Look at the pictures. Are you horrified? Let's see. Here's a good shot here. Are you horrified? Terrified? No?
Nothing short of horrifying. It really tells you a lot that we've gotten to the point in this country where protesters feel they can go to somebody's private residence, scream and yell and try to intimidate them into voting the way that they want them to do.
You don't say. You don't say. Let's remember they work for us. They work for the people. Now, let me get this straight, ladies and gentlemen. So it's okay for these corporations to intimidate these politicians to get them to do what they want to do. But it's not okay for the people who actually put them in office, the people who voted for them, to intimidate them to get them to do what we want them to do. Help that make sense to me. Help me understand. Corporations do it all the time. All the time. Thank you so much for the super chat, Bad Fella 511. The founding fathers themselves protested. LMAOO. Thank you so much for the super chat. AGF Milan, thank you for the super chat. My gut feels is the sum of the supposed left that play the identity game like Nomiki are really either self-centered liberals and socio-culturally backstabbing pro-market neoliberal types. You may have a point there, AJF. I think you're onto something. So I'm not going to play this entire video, but I did want to show you that people are protesting at the homes. If you have not seen that yet, here's more images here.
Do you know any more about that?
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's entirely right. And whether or not it's illegal is sort of irrelevant here. It's the morality of the thing. The fact that they've decided that it's now acceptable to intimidate a justice into getting what they want just shows how deranged and out of touch with the American people the radical left is.
The radical left? What radical left? Most of the people out there are Democrats. They're not even left. They're liberals. Let's just keep it real. I'm going to play this part again. Listen to what he says right here, because I have something to say about this.
Arranged and out of touch with the American people, the radical left is. The fact that we can have this conversation between us and we can discuss.
This guy's such a joke.
The fact that they've decided that it's now acceptable to intimidate a justice into getting what they want just.
But it's okay for corporations to do that. It's okay for JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs. It's okay for them to intimidate justices, politicians, to get them to do what they want. But it's not okay for the American people, which is we're the people they actually are supposed to be working for. It's not okay for us to demand anything. Bye. Just something I want you to reflect on. He said also that it's immoral. So we're basing laws on what we consider to be moral and not moral now? Okay, if that's the case, then why haven't we ended qualified immunity? It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Lucky Burrito said they want to control our bodies and how we protest. We are entering into what I feel like is an authoritarian state. They want to control everything we do. They want to control what we say on social media platforms. They want to control who we associate with. They want to control who we vote for. They want to control how we protest, who we protest with, where we protest. They want complete and absolute control.